Welcome to my first video essay. I chose video game movies in an attempt to be simple, unique, and effective. But while researching for this assignment, I searched video game movie genre onto my default web browser. To my surprise, it gave me "This is not a genre." Video essay over. Sorry, George. Unless I make a case for it, because it is, and I will say so. My definition of a video game movie genre, yes, I will continue to use its full name, would be a repulsive mutation of a musical genre, with films inside adhering to its convention of using songs to push the plot forward. The stories told within it are entirely varied. Instead of songs, it's video game elements, like sounds, settings, framings, logic, and visual or verbal references to video games, including real-world consoles or games that are meaningful to the plot. I include most video game adaptations as a part of a video game movie genre, because the conventions I've listed are usually integral to the adaptation, similar to how film adaptations of musical theatre are still musicals, just in movie form. If you haven't been up to date with the kids of the last two generations, video games are games played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a monitor or other display. Since its boom with Pong, the genre of video games has split in so many different directions with the development of technology. We are theoretically in the age where you can simulate anything in tech form, be it a restaurant owner, a race car driver, a gun wielder, or God. And if you can't find anything, beginner courses in programming are as accessible as ever. Yes, even you could be on your way to creating the next record-breaking smash hit video game, if you get lucky. Some video game franchises' popularity has resulted in full feature film adaptations, for better or worse. See the Mario franchise, Mortal Kombat franchise, and the Resident Evil franchise. The former was the first video game that got an adaptation made for it, called Super Mario Bros., a funny romp in a grunge and wet-looking but also dehydrated Brooklyn, with anti-police and capitalistic metaphors, and Sid the Sloth's there too, he's Luigi. However, it suffered in production and then at the box office, with multiple rewrites, drunk actors, and a lack of many expected components of the series, like many non-human characters not looking anything like how they did back in the games. Yoshi, Goombas, and any fucking turtle. This is terrifying. Then, it didn't even make back its budget through it all. You, dear viewer, may be gifted with hindsight, knowing there was a happy ending, but this was not it. This 1993 Mario movie was the unsuccessful successor to 11 years prior, the first video game movie, if not in the West. Tron crashed through the screens with lasers and motorbikes. An unlikely Disney film that was very dark for the company, not in its story or messaging, which they're notorious for, but visually. The heavy use of early 80s CGI was thought for the best, just have everything happen in the void.
The journey begins across an electronic sea.
This choice paid off stylistically, achieving a moody look that inspired the use of neon colours in later video game movies, like Ready Player One, Pixels, and Sonic. Now for the aforementioned variety of game genres, let's look at the genres of 35 video game movies I've compiled. I've got sci-fi action adventure, fantasy adventure, action, martial arts fantasy action, sci-fi, action adventure, action horror, spy action comedy, sci-fi, supernatural horror, action thriller, action comedy, action horror, sci-fi action, action fantasy, sci-fi martial arts, action, comedy, fantasy adventure comedy, action crime, sci-fi comedy, comedy, action fantasy, fantasy adventure comedy, action horror, sci-fi, mystery fantasy comedy, action adventure comedy, martial arts fantasy, action adventure, horror, and adventure comedy. Yeah. If you like math, action was mentioned 18 times. I left one out though, as it was a special one with a unique genre that wasn't repeated once. Romance. Granted, it's also blended with action and comedy, but if you haven't guessed, that film is, cue music, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Directed by Edgar Wright, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a romantic comedy following Scott Pilgrim fighting all of Ramona Flowers' 7 evil exes. Okay, yeah, it's a comic adaptation and not a video game adaptation, but the comics themselves are like little love letters to classic video games. That's the whole point of this genre of film. And look at all the video game elements in this movie. The way Scott collects coins, graphic overlays before battles, the battles that forward the plot, the soundscape of this movie. I mean, just listen to all this. And here's a P-bar. What even is this? I hate the concept of this. The execution, chef's kiss, hilarious, and also thematic for a video game movie. Prior to this film's release, and for a while after, video game movies weren't doing great commercially or artistically due to a major lack of general passion for the genre. Adaptation or not, the individual goal for each movie chalked up to just milking a trend and those a part of it for all the money they could bring. This objective didn't work out well, because we consumers, maybe sheep, we can't force us to drink. Since John, not a single movie has a rating on Rotten Tomatoes that's higher than 40%, except Spy Kids 3, Game Over, it's 45, and Antonio Banderas, so... That's where Scott Pilgrim comes in. He's a consumer, just like us, and his friends are too. They buy this stuff. They're nerds, geeks, and losers. But they're having so much fun because nerds, geeks, and losers made this thing. So mean. Sorry. Edgar Wright had hints of techie elements in his discography, from Space and Shaun of the Dead. There were those same bleeps and bloops we heard in Scott Pilgrim, but they weren't crucial to moving the plot along.
Dangerous. Worry, Daisy. Mike knows exactly what he's doing.
Then all that came to fruition, with that passion shining through, that Edgar Wright decided to subvert the genre by adaptating a romance instead of a done and notorious sci-fi action comedy adventure video game. This mix of uniqueness and romance wasn't initially a success, not making back its budget either. Seemingly a trend. However, since it has risen in popularity as compared to the other 35 films on my list, Scott Pilgrim's rating on Rotten Tomatoes as of 2023 has only been beaten by 2 films, which both came out 2 years later. The third Resident Evil film, which is 100% from 5 reviews, and Wreck-It Ralph, which is peak revival Disney. I think that is where the shift happened in society. It could be the emergence of elder Zoomers and Malumers born to the internet gamer subcultures finally shaping their generational voice for corporate milking. Wreck-It Ralph was the most successful video game movie, commercially and artistically. This duo of description was short-lived, among most of the films afterwards not being highly rated, despite the profits ranging on the successful side. But the tides are turning. With the last 10 movies on my list, all within the last 6 years, having an average rating of 64%. Hopefully, this is where it continues, as my hindsight has reached present times. As video game movies have a reputation for worse, it is unfair for some gems to bubble only as cult classics. But that's where all my favourite films are anyway. Goodbye.